with Radhika Ramaseshan, one of India's senior-most political journalists, formerly with the Telegraph newspaper, who has been covering politics, especially in Uttar Pradesh, for more than 35 years. She has covered the Ram Janmabhoomi agitation since 1989, was a witness to the demolition of the Babri masjid on the 6th of December 1992, and today, hours before the inaugural of the Grand Mandir of the Grand Ram Temple by none other than Prime Minister Narendra Modi in Ayodhya, I'd like to ask Radhika about what she thinks is happening on the ground. But first of all, let me welcome you. Radhika, welcome to Awaaz South Asia.
Thank you, Jyoti. Thank you so much for having me on your show. Yeah.
So Radhika, my first question to you is that you've really seen the gamut of the years. So many chief ministers who lost their chief ministership, the politics of the years, whether it was the Samajwadi Party with Mulayam Singh Yadav, then Kalyan Singh, and then later the politics of UP. But then and now, how do you look at the politics of the Ram Mandir today, just hours before the Grand Temple is going to be inaugurated?
Yeah. So we are just a few hours away before the inauguration, Jyoti. It's just been an onward march towards triumphalism. A lot of us who covered the events right from the foundation laying, the Shilanyas in October 1989, followed by the elections, the general elections, parliament as well as UP elections, till the demolition of the mosque. Sort of we've seen the mood transformed, even amongst the BJP. I think even the BJP, given the roadblocks that were put by the judiciary, by the governments of the day, it was a Congress government for a long time at the center. Before that, you had VP Singh, but VP Singh was supported by the BJP. That's right. How the initial march towards the temple was facilitated. Mm-hmm. So we've seen the ups and downs, the peaks and troughs of the movement. But at no point did I have any doubt that eventually a temple would not come up on the site. Mm-hmm. It was as though the Sangh Parivar, and initially it was the VHP was the spearhead of the movement. I mean, the right. BJP jumped onto it later through Advani's LK Advani's Rath Yatra. Right. So, there was very little doubt that the VHP, expert strategist in Ashok Singhal. If there was no Ashok Singhal, there would have been no Ram Janmabhoomi movement. Absolutely. I will say that with, some confidence. So they had tapped into the wellspring of something very deep amongst Hindus, at least in the West and the North. I'm not talking about Hindus in the South, except maybe Karnataka. This was something which was subliminal, existed at a subliminal level. And the reference point was always Islamic rule, two things, Islamic rule and the partition of India. If you spoke to any Karsevak or an activist, these were the two reference points, that we were subjugated to slavery. And, India, we lost a good portion of our territory to an Islamic, to what eventually became an Islamic country, a territory which was rightfully ours. Mm-hmm. So these two things kind of, it was more than embitterment. It was, call it rancor, call it whatever, anger, a sense of humiliation. So I think the VHP struck at the right moment. And the immediate background was the Congress's success in 1984 elections. Right. Late Pramod Mahajan, the BJP General Secretary, was very important during Atal Bihari Vajpayee's regime. He always used to tell some of us that the first Hindutva election was 1984. So when I reminded him of the election after the Bangladesh war and so he said, no, this was the real Hindutva election. Mm-hmm. And, Hindus voted as a huge community for the Congress, and that made us really panicky. We had to think of a counter immediately. Well, the BJP was on the margins. They obviously didn't think of a counter until they passed the Palampur resolution much later, calling for the Ram Mandir temple. It was really the VHP which laid the foundation in 84-85 when they paraded the bricks, the shillas for the Ram Mandir,
Right.
and then the Ram Diyas, and so on. So the build-up started. I would say that it was assiduous, hard work to start with. I mean, all this obviously didn't happen in a few months or a few years or something. They were persistently at it, and it's now reached its logical culmination in a very triumphal way. I mean, even when the Babri Masjid was brought down, I didn't sort of sense the kind of triumphalism that I am finally seeing now, although from a distance. I'm not in Ayodhya, so I can't really talk about the mood. But that is the way it panned out. There were ups and downs, certainly. I mean, after the demolition, there was a phase which, I would use a Hindi word, thanda, it was. Um, they kind of tried to whip up the whole temple issue, but it didn't really catch on because people by then had become a little skeptical, a little cynical. Many of them had given up on the idea of a temple even coming up on the place where the mosque stood. But, given Modi's resolve to implement the core issues, and this is like the most core of the three core issues,
Right.
he's achieved what previous regimes could not, BJP regimes. Yeah.
So Radhika, a couple of really interesting points you made. The first is that in 1992 as well, when the masjid was demolished, that you said that the BJP or the VHP, the Vishwa Hindu Parishad, had tapped into something subliminal. What is this something subliminal?
Deep hatred. I mean, I am sorry to have to use it. It doesn't mean I share that sense, not even by a long, long shot. It was deep hatred. I never sensed this kind of hatred in the Hindu community in the places where I lived in Bombay, or I mean, in Bombay you would have communal flare-ups every now and then, but it ended at some point, and you wouldn't see those feelings of hatred persisting. This was visceral hatred towards a community. I mean, that is the only way I can put it.
Towards
I was in
Muslims.
Assam, towards Muslims. Absolutely towards Muslims, and it got conflated with other issues like the demand for a uniform civil code, abrogation of Article 370, even annexation of POK, and doing away with Urdu. There were a whole basket of issues which congealed to make a large picture, which was motivated by this hatred towards Muslims. There's no other way of sugarcoating it or putting it. I was shocked when I spoke to people in UP after moving to Lucknow. And, the kind of things they would say, I mean, I don't even want to quote some of that. I do remember what they said, especially the women, the younger people. So it was the VHP, I think Ashok Singhal sussed out the mood very, very well before the BJP did. Ashok Singhal and the RSS, which was then headed by Rajendra Singh, who incidentally was from Uttar Pradesh, from Allahabad, Thakur from Allahabad. And they sort of felt that UP had to be the epicenter of the movement. Therefore, they even took up Kashi Vishwanath and Mathura. I mean, they were like a triad, so to speak, the three. But it was one at a time. So the Ram Mandir obviously has a very long history going back to 1949 when the idol was surreptitiously sneaked in with the help of the local administration.
Yeah.
And the ground was pretty fertile to build on the movement. And this is our...
Yeah, sorry,
yeah,
go
sorry.
ahead. No, go ahead.
Yeah, and this is the Awadh region, And the Awadh region, I mean, Jyoti, people talk about this Ganga, Jamni, Tehzeeb, and so on. Even I got a little carried away. I thought, yes, the syncretic culture was very much a part of Uttar Pradesh. Then I realized it probably exists in my imagination, or I am romanticizing the whole thing, because by the time I reached Lucknow, Urdu was on its way out. People, I mean, in the government, and that was a government headed by Mulayam Singh Yadav,
Mhm.
started using a very Sanskritized form of Hindi, with which I am not familiar with. My Hindi draws a lot from Urdu, and
Right.
so on. So the ground was prepared. I mean, so to speak, it was a matter of taking a few steps here and there. Yeah.
So when LK Advani, who starts on the Rath Yatra in 1990 from Somnath, and which we know that subsequently it was Lalu Prasad. Oh, sorry, Radhika.
Yeah,
Um,
it's okay. Yeah.
we know that LK Advani, when he starts on the Rath Yatra in 1990, subsequently when at the time when Lalu Prasad Yadav was Chief Minister of Bihar, he brings that to a halt. But Mr. Advani always talked about this astha or devotion that Hindus had towards their god Ram. And he said it didn't matter whether the birthplace of Ram was on this spot in Ayodhya or 100 meters away or 2 kilometers away. The fact that it was in Ayodhya and that this is where he was born and this is where people believed he was born, that was enough. So, what is this devotion or astha, and how would you compare it with the this subliminal hatred towards Muslims that you talk about?
Yeah, I think one has to make a distinction between astha, faith in a very genuine form, and political Hindutva.
Mhm.
Now, when Advani took it in his hands, with Ashok Singhal also, it was moving in the direction of a very political form of Hindutva.
Mhm.
Advani politicized the issue completely. But in people's minds, when I'm talking about people, I'm talking about the masses
Mhm.
that began voting for the BJP, and that started talking about the birthplace of Ram and the need to liberate, quote unquote, the birthplace. For them, they saw no distinction between astha and politicization. I mean, this was a question I've asked people again and again, including the Hindu clergy in Ayodhya, that don't you see it as a political movement? ठीक है, if a party has given the leadership, and if you're going to get a temple, what is wrong? I mean, it's all right, every issue in this country is politicized. They reminded me of the agitation against cow slaughter, which was done during Indira Gandhi's time, and which she sort of attempted to crush using police force. I mean, cow, it's a matter of faith. I mean, we worship the cow as Hindus,
Right.
but it became a political issue, though we sadhus led the movement.
Mhm.
So in the consciousness of most Hindus, they see no distinction between a religion as I understand, and a political Hindutva. Today, it's an instrument of political Hindutva. No matter what the Shankaracharya say, I mean, Shankaracharyas are quibbling about
What
little
is an
things.
instrument of political Hindutva?
The Ram Temple. The
Okay.
Ram Temple and all the issues that it gave birth to, that it birthed, and all the issues that it congealed with eventually. Every one of them is an instrument to further political Hindutva. Eventually, I guess they want to create a Hindu Rashtra, or I mean, rename India or Bharat. I mean, Bharat has also gained currency as a Hindu Rashtra, but I think that is what it's leading up to, and it is very political. Yeah.
So this devotion or this faith that people have, and even today, I'm in Delhi. I'm not in Ayodhya, but when you talk to people even here, and they all say, actually, somebody just told me this morning. He said that when I see the temple, I don't see that this is a temple built by the BJP, but I see
Hmm.
that this is a temple to the god Ram. So,
Hmm.
how would you explain that? I mean, do they still have this devotion, or is it just an instrument of Hindutva?
Look, I mean, the very persons you spoke to and who said that they see a temple not built not by the BJP, but a temple for Ram, I'm dead certain that they will vote the BJP in the next election. I mean, they really don't make a distinction. Probably they're embarrassed to say the more thinking lot. I mean, there are thinking Hindus. Let's not sort of skip that. The more thinking lot would probably feel just a bit of embarrassment, to
Cringe of
say that
remorse. Yeah.
a pinch of embarrassment more than remorse.
Okay.
I'll take you back to the Babri Masjid demolition. After I complete this, they would probably feel a pinch of embarrassment to say that, yeah, okay, this is, a temple built by Modi or Ram. Look at the spectacle on display. I mean, it is entirely a BJP show, a
Mhm.
show which is taken over by the present establishment. I mean, we can't kind of overlook that. And yet, nothing that doesn't bother anybody in the least. I mean, they're perfectly comfortable with that. They
Mhm.
see the icon of Ram, an adult Ram. It's no longer Ram Lalla. It's an
That's right.
adult Ram who has been installed in the sanctum sanctorum. So they see nothing wrong in that, in sort of segueing the BJP with Ram. I mean, in their minds, the two are inseparable, and that is how it is going to be. And sure, when the BJP takes credit for building the temple, nobody is going to have a problem with that. I mean,
Mhm.
even the opposition you're seeing is so defensive. They're not mentioning this at all. They're bringing up the objections raised by the Shankaracharyas, which don't really cut ice with most people, I think.
Right.
Yeah.
So do you think then therefore the whole inaugural and the run up to it and the post inaugural on the 22nd of January, do you think that this is just it is managed by the state entirely, whether it's the center or the state of Uttar Pradesh, or are there pilgrims also who want to come to Ayodhya and to pray to their God?
Well, it helps to have a BJP, a full-fledged BJP government in the center, a government with a huge majority in Uttar Pradesh. That has definitely helped. But to say that it is entirely state managed, I mean, that would be taking things a little far. There are droves and droves of pilgrims coming from all over the country. I mean, look at the weather. It's gray, it's damp, trains are not running on time, flights are not on time, and yet people are determined to reach Ayodhya to watch this whole spectacle unfolding. So it's definitely there is that element as well, the pilgrims as well. And imagine a scenario where there was no BJP government in Uttar Pradesh. There's a government in the center, but there's no government in Uttar Pradesh. Well, I'd like to think that in today's milieu, even if there was an opposition government in Uttar Pradesh, they wouldn't have come in the way at all. This temple would have been, it is a fait accompli. That's what it had to happen. It's bound to happen. So to call it entirely state sponsored would be a bit flawed, in my opinion.
But when you say the state, when you say state sponsored or party sponsored, are you making a distinction between state in the sense of the government, both UP as well as the center, and the party, which is the BJP? Or are you saying that they're one and the same today?
Absolutely one and the same. I mean, you have the BJP flags all over. You have posters of the BJP leaders, cutouts of the BJP leaders. So the party and the government are one at the moment. I mean, and the VIPs on the platform. I mean, you have the prime minister, you have the chief minister, you have the governor, and you have the RSS Sarsanchalak and Nritya Gopal Das, one of the
Right.
older Mahants of
Once.
Ayodhya. So, I mean, it's futile making a distinction at this point between the governments, the UP and the central governments, and the BJP. They are one and the same. And look, we have elections in just a few months.
Right.
And the BJP is going to carry this whole temple on its chariot country over. So
So,
it is very much,
so,
yeah.
so if state and party, the BJP and the state are synonymous today, then where is the room for this devotion? Then it seems as if that there is no room for this pilgrim who wants to pray. I mean, he probably doesn't exist, he or she.
No, no, the pilgrims are very much there. They do exist. They are coming. They are coming, and they are staying in pretty, I would say, harsh circumstances. I mean, there are hotels, but I guess not all of them can afford a hotel or even get a place in a hotel. They have put up tents. I mean, that way it has really helped the BJP to have its own government in Uttar Pradesh as well. So they would like to see themselves as pilgrims, Jyoti, and not necessarily as the Kar Sevaks that we saw in 1992 and before that. Those were entirely motivated RSS, BJP, Bajrang Dal activists. They were not pilgrims. Today, you're going to see a whole lot of pilgrims, who a majority of who are possibly likely BJP voters. But I would still regroup the gathering there into the RSS leadership, the BJP leadership, remnants of the Bajrang Dal and the VHP, then the clergy, BJP, RSS aligned clergy, and the pilgrims, people who will be eventually voters of the BJP.
So you
So
do
that's the
see,
way.
so you do see that, okay, let me say this again. So you feel that the BJP or the Hindutva project is tapping into this devotion, and that there is this astha still, wherever it comes from, but it's there.
It's very much there. Let's not forget was always an icon in the north and possibly in the west. Mind you, he was not iconized in the south. In Tamil Nadu, for instance, the state where I come from, Diwali is celebrated, but it's not synonymous with Ram, unlike in the north of India. Then in the east, in West Bengal, BJP leaders themselves said that there was no point taking this Jai Shri Ram slogan in Bengal because it didn't make sense. Ram and Hanuman didn't really resonate with the people, the Hindus of Bengal. We had to talk about Durga, then we had to talk about Swami Vivekanand and the Ramakrishna monastery and so on. So there are subtle differences, overt as well as subtle differences in the way Ram is perceived. But for the BJP, it's the West and the North that matters the most in their political scheme at the moment. Of course, they would love to make inroads in the South and keep their gains in West Bengal. But Ram is essentially, I would say, a god of the North and the West. I mean, he's not really penetrated into the South.
So
Except
Radhika,
not even.
you talked about the elections in a few months' time. Now, political reporters, writers like you, and we read you all very closely, talk a lot about the caste configuration in every state. So in Uttar Pradesh, how would you see the Ram Mandir, the fallout of the Ram Mandir in the months to come before the general elections? And what do you think the role of this caste configuration is going to be?
Yeah, very interesting question. Because just today I was talking to somebody in Ayodhya, and he said the BJP is making slight amendments in its strategy. It has invited the Dome Raja from Banaras, and a small community of Domes from Banaras, because there is a feeling that there is too much emphasis on the celebrities, film stars, and sportsmen, and so on. So they have to correct it. They have to bring their social engineering as well. So, as far as the BJP is concerned, I would say that the three prongs of their strategy will be Hindutva, as expressed through the Ram Mandir and maybe other issues as well. Reading down of Article 370, I mean, that may not resonate very much in outside Kashmir, but still it will be an issue. Uniform Civil Code. But Ram Mandir will be the central point. Then there will be welfare, all the doles and rations and whatever that's being distributed to the below poverty line people, and very important, social engineering. We should not overlook this at all, because Ram is fine, and Ram did manage to consolidate the castes in 91. In the 91 election, one saw that, barring the Yadavs and the Jatavs and a few others, Even the so-called lower rungs of the caste hierarchy voted the BJP. So the BJP will be very, very mindful of keeping the caste consolidation intact. I would not see them letting go of it. The core support is drawn from the upper castes, even now, the Brahmins, the Rajputs, and the Banyas. But without the OBCs and the Dalits, large sections, the BJP is really nowhere near getting the kind of spectacular number of seats that they have been getting since 2014. So, because if you recall, they won the 1991 election, and I remember I was in Lucknow. There was a huge debate over who was going to become the chief minister. Murli Manohar Joshi's name was doing the rounds. Kalraj Mishra, both Brahmins, their names were doing the rounds, and Kalyan Singh. Kalyan Singh, who was an OBC Lodh Rajput.
Right.
Then finally, I believe Govindacharya stepped in and insisted that we must not be pipped to the post by the socialists, because the socialists were very active on Mandal politics then. Janata Dal and Mulayam Singh had separated, then formed his Samajwadi Party. So we have to make Kalyan Singh the chief minister. I mean, we must have an OBC. He insisted, and that is how Kalyan Singh became the chief minister. And after that, the BJP has been adopting a pro-OBC strategy, of which the beneficiary is Mr. Modi as well, Shivraj Singh Chauhan, Uma Bharti, whole load of OBC leaders were nurtured. And
so even today, in the run-up to the general election, Hindutva is not the only plank. They will be very careful about the social or caste engineering.
Absolutely. They'll be very careful, because if you take even Ayodhya, I'm just talking about Ayodhya Assembly. The town Ayodhya is made up of upper caste, predominantly Banyas, Brahmins, and so on. Now, you just move outside the town limits, you have gaons, villages like Milkipur and Gosaiganj. They're full of Yadavs, It's not a very easy, it's not a cakewalk. It's not a kinch for the BJP to just take Ayodhya. It will have to do its caste caste balanced in order to keep the seat. And it has always been a bit of a struggle for the BJP to keep Faizabad, the Lok Sabha. And Ayodhya has been relatively easy because of the Ram Mandir, but still there has to be an effort at putting together the social engineering formula. It's very important for them.
You don't think that the Yadavs, who are Hindus, will also vote the BJP because Ram Lalla is bigger than their caste, or more important, shall we say?
Yeah, okay, that's very interesting. Since 2014, a section of Yadavs have been voting BJP. And it's not necessarily because of Ram Lalla. Ram Lalla was not the issue in 2014 or even 2019. It's because of Modi and the fact that he's OBC, so they could identify with him. And they also saw him as a kind of harbinger of development and, a better quality of life. Many of them had migrated to Gujarat. So they said, we saw the quality of life in Gujarat as compared with UP. So there was that Vikas, development, a better economic status, as well as Hindutva. Yeah, okay, yeah. I mean, Hindutva is not really overstated if you go into the villages. If you sort of pry and ask them, they'll say, ye bhi hai, aastha bhi hai, hum Hindu hai. But there is more about social engineering and development and the freebies that they're getting from the state.
So BJP
will be mindful. Yeah.
So last couple of questions, Radhika. You talked earlier about the subliminal hatred towards the Muslims. Now, the Muslims, which form a large percentage of Uttar Pradesh, 18 to 19%, what happens to this large community?
Yeah, well, we've seen the condition of Muslims since 2014. Both when, of course, Akhilesh there was a Samajwadi Party government that was then replaced by BJP that won 2 terms. Muslims have been unusually quiet, Jyoti. Otherwise, when I went to cover an election, and you also covered elections in UP, if you go into the villages, I found that Muslims were the most articulate among various communities, more than the upper caste. Now, suddenly, if you visit a Muslim mohalla, first of all, there is some reluctance to open up to a Hindu. You have to kind of convince them that you're not a BJP Hindu.
Right.
And second of all, they do feel that they've been not just ignored, repressed. You've had various kinds of measures, repressive measures, especially under the present UP government. Free use of bulldozers to bring down properties of alleged Muslim mafia. I don't want to authoritatively say that they're criminals or whatever. It obviously to teach the community a lesson, so to speak. So the community has just being taught lessons without really getting anything concrete. The BJP does say that when we talk of Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas, whatever is being doled out goes to every community, regardless of whether they are Hindus or Muslims. Muslims have a slightly different spin on that, different take, if I may say so. However, because the opposition, whether it is the Samajwadi Party or the BSP or the Congress, is very defensive, very, very defensive on this whole Hindutva question, Muslims are kind of losing faith in the political process. They don't really see too much hope from the parties for which they voted. I mean, very devotedly voted these parties, thinking that, they can counter the BJP. Now they're sort of, there's some disillusionment, disenchantment with the opposition. I wouldn't say that it's hopeless. I mean, they will still vote, but there is considerable disenchantment with the opposition.
So the subliminal hatred that you talked about in the VHP cadres or in the BJP cadres in 1990, 91, 92, has that seeped down into the general Hindu population? Do you feel that there is much more of a cleavage between Hindu Muslim in towns, villages, in UP?
Certainly. For instance, if you go to a Jat Bahol Kshetra, as they say in West UP, they tell you, Jats and Muslims have always lived in unity. Kheer ke jaise hain, doodh hum dete hain, so they bring the dry fruits, and it's like a good mishran. That is the kind of metaphor they use. And the conversation goes on, and finally, what do they say in the end? पर मुसलमानों की टोपी तो सीधा कर दी BJP. This is how the conversation invariably ends. So that kind of gives you a clue as to where they are inclined politically. Of course, Muzaffarnagar, West UP has seen some awful riots, violence in recent times. So the effect, it lingers, although they say that, no, we want to forget the past is past and that kind of thing. But it doesn't. It has definitely seeped down. There are, however, pockets, especially if you go towards eastern UP, where, by the way, the BJP didn't do too well in the last assembly elections. That's where the Samajwadi made all its gains. This Hindu-Muslim question doesn't really weigh with so much with the voters. They talk, there it is caste identity, identifying with, and other economic issues, because interestingly, in the East UP, they do see the BJP as a party of the rich person. I mean, they don't see it as a very inclusive party. So one has to make a distinction out there, and I'm sure the BJP is worried about the kind of perceptions that float about it in East UP.
Right. Radhika, thank you so much for your time. This has been one of the frankest and most insightful discussions that I've had on UP politics, and really your experience and your analysis shows through. Thank you so much for your time and for speaking to me on Awaaz South Asia.
Yeah, thank you, Jyoti. Thank you so much.